Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fika with Friends, our October's Fika. And our last Fika was in July, so we're very keen to crack on with this one and get around to a fascinating conversation. And for some of you, probably a cinnamon bun. And in this Fika, our expert speakers are going to discuss their experience in the area of responsible regeneration and development. You'll hear from Michelle Williams from Igloo Regeneration and Paul Shirley Smith from Camlins, landscape architects. And they're going to talk about their work on the Vaux Housing development located within the Sunderland Riverside master plan. And they'll be joined by Luke Coe, also from Camlins, who's a senior landscape architect there. And the interesting thing for us about this particular project is that Igloo's development methodology footprint is used for the development of the master plan or has been used for the development, and embraces the consultation process undertaken to define the brief for the project. And unusually, it embraces all 17 of the SDGs. We've never had one which actually manages to bring all of these into the discussion. So following this, we'll see further details from Paul about how this resulting brief translated into the design for the landscape and public realm at Vaux Housing. And Igloo is the UK's leading responsible real estate business. As a purpose-driven developer, funder and investor, they work with communities, local authorities and investors who want to make better places. And Igloo has been named Best for the World. Really quite something for the environment by B Lab, scoring within the top 5% of all B Corps across the world. So really impressive information there coming from them around the SDGs in particular. So I'd like to welcome Michelle, Paul and Luke. I'm Romy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the commercial director here at Vestra in the UK. Just trying to move my slides on. It's on a bit of a go slow today. And I just wanted to mention a little bit about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is what the goals are all moving towards, so that you understand a little bit more about the background. These were adopted by all UN member states back in 2015, and they provide a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. And that's very much what this project is about. And at its heart are the 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that you can see here. And they're an urgent call for action by all countries, both developed and developing, in a global partnership. And I think when you've seen the news from the last couple of days about the climate catastrophe, I think we've gone beyond anything else now from the UN. You can see how important this is. And a lot of it is about tackling health and education, reducing inequality, spurring economic growth, but all the while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests in particular. Many of you will know that we've adopted 9 of these goals into our own business strategy, hence the theme of our Fika with Friends webinars. They're all about the SDGs. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions for the speakers about the project and anything else you have in mind. So please add them to the Q&A tab and join in the conversation, which we'll run after the presentations. So for now, over to you, Michelle. I'll stop sharing.
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can share.
Yeah.
Is that come up?
Yeah, looks perfect.
Great. Okay.
I should disappear.
Can I just check that the slides are moving?
Yeah.
Moving?
They are all good. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
I'll leave you to it. Okay.
Hang on a minute. Right. Well, thanks for the kind intro, Romy. First of all, I'll give you a bit of background about Igloo. As Romy's already mentioned, we are a purpose-driven real estate company. We are the UK's first real estate B Corp. However, I believe there are more now, which is great news. Our purpose is for people, place and planet. We mainly operate on sorry, there's something going on with my slides here. There we go. We mainly operate on brownfield sites in deprived neighbourhoods in cities and towns across the UK. And this is how we became involved in this wonderful project. We were appointed by Sunderland City Council as development manager for the initial master plan, and then to deliver the first flagship Resi scheme called Vaux Housing, which sits within the master plan. Sunderland City Council had some serious ambitions for the regeneration of this area, and this is what is now called Sunderland Riverside. So I'll just move on. Before we get into talking about the development methodology and our engagement, this just gives you some context to where the master plan is and how big it is. So in the centre of the image, you can see the Riverside master plan, which is situated in Sunderland, who some of you may not know is in the northeast of England. It's just over 33 hectares and is near the city centre, spanning the River Wear. Sunderland is a city which has fallen on hard times in the past with the decline of the shipbuilding industry, which was once there. And Paul will tell you a bit more about the history of the site in a moment. And although it has made economic progress in the past 20 to 30 years, the city centre has been left behind, and the resident population of the city centre is really low. So using our footprint methodology, we initially helped the council to focus in on the aspirations for the site and determine the brief. So I'll just go into a bit of what footprint is about. So we established the development methodology called footprint. It helped us set up about 20 years ago what the UN described as the world's first responsible real estate fund. And today we use it across our whole portfolio on behalf of our clients. And we used it here for Sunderland Riverside and on the housing scheme. These processes are continuously reviewed so that we ensure that our clients benefit from our project team's experience. The processes are grouped under 6 dimensions, which are aligned with some of the UN development goals, although the master plan goes on to try and achieve, many more, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But you can see on the slide that our 6 dimensions are well-being, community, place, nature, climate, and circular, and the corresponding UN goals are above. And that effectively creates our purpose: people, place, and planet. A lot of P's. So this is our footprint roadmap, and I won't go into too much detail because there's a lot of info, but you can see that we track the evolution of the project through the footprint reviews, and which happen at each key gateway. So we score the project at each stage against the market standard and then how it is doing against the initial brief. The methodology is audited by JLL, and we have a footprint board called FAB, which is made up of industry expert advisors. But now back to Sunderland. So the process starts with a co-creation workshop, and this is where we bring together all the key stakeholders at the beginning of the project to map out what we should be doing to optimize the footprint outcome, the positive footprint outcome. We then went on to carry out extensive community engagement. We set up a temporary exhibition in a pop-up shop within the city centre for members of the public to come in. And more than 400 people did to come and meet our team and share their ideas. That was followed by a 4-day workshop with 135 people, which took part in an intensive programme of site visits and discussions. And an example of one of the events that we held, we worked with a community group and took members of the public to go and explore Galleys Gill Park, which you'll learn about in a bit. Where they engaged in nature spotting and picking blackberries. All that engagement is then fed into the project action plan, which is essentially the brief, and that records the priorities and actions with a maximum positive impact. So this is our vision statement, and this is what emerged from the engagement. And I will read it because it's quite a powerful statement. So Riverside Sunderland is a beacon of change, leading the way towards a new kind of city living for the future. Harmoniously integrated in this green and waterside landscape, Riverside Sunderland is a magnet for investment, attracting businesses and homemakers seeking to pioneer planet-conscious and prosperous future and find a sense of belonging in a new, forward-thinking, zero-carbon community. And then below are the main aspirations and priorities which relate to each of the 6 dimensions. And that vision statement and those aspirations are woven through the design with the final ambition for the master plan, which you can see on the screen. Although our footprint methodology aligns with 5-year end goals, the wider master plan targeted others, and I won't go through them all, but for example, quality education, the aspiration to build new schools, affordable and clean energy. They have been exploring whether we can implement a district heating system, decent work and economic growth by bringing new job opportunities to the city through a new eye hospital and new businesses coming into the city centre. And then industry, innovation and infrastructure. They're looking to build new bridges and cycle paths and pedestrian walkways, which Paul will go into. I mean, there really is so much to talk about in regard to the master plan of Vaux Housing, but we're just going to focus on the landscape and public realm. And I will hand over to Paul and Luke of Camlins, who are the landscape architects, to talk about that. However, I just wanted to highlight some of the priorities which came through from the engagement on what people wanted from the landscape. And that was wildlife and biodiversity should be enhanced and be a key part of the character. Play opportunities, formal, incidental, forest-type play should be created, and there should be scope for putting on events within the park and landscape to create positive opportunities. And at the end of the presentation, we can share website links to our methodology and and the master plan details as well, if you want to take a closer look. I will just try and there we go. I have stopped sharing. Paul, over to you.
You have, thank you. Right, so hopefully I'm sharing. Is that sharing screen now?
Just my face.
Paul, we agreed we weren't going to do this. Please don't start showing mine now.
Right. Is that sharing?
I think you've got something above what you want to be sharing. I think you've got that's your Google Maps tab, I think, on top of the presentation beneath, maybe.
Is the green plan showing now?
Yeah, there is.
Yay!
Perfect.
Right. Apologies, everybody. Right, now, hello, I'm Paul Shirley Smith. I'm a director at Camlins. We're landscape architects. We have a team of 15 to 20 people in Shrewsbury. We work all over the UK, sometimes beyond. We've been at this for more than 30 years. We're very broadly design-led urban regeneration practice, among other things. So this is an amazing project for us. It's a huge project. It addresses all the big things that preoccupy most of us these days: climate emergency, biodiversity crisis, levelling up, and basically finding new ways of living, and immediate local concerns, creating jobs, building communal life in the city. And there's a huge appetite for this in Sunderland to get on with that right now, and that's really what this plan is about. I should say it's a massive team effort, obviously, and we're working very closely with architects Proctor Matthews, Mawson Kerr, Faulkner Browns, and of course loads of people in the client team, working Michelle, and also Sunderland City Council. We've had an amazing brief from Igloo, which Michelle has already talked about. I'm going to talk about the master plan, and Luke, my colleague Luke Coe, is going to talk about Vaux Housing, which is a part of the master plan which is about to be delivered. There's so much to say and not much time, so I will go quite quickly, but even then it's still only a very snapshot really of all the work that's gone on. So this is aerial 3D of our big green plan. We can see the North Sea out here. We can see the River Wear and the River Gorge. We can see the city. This is the Victorian grid, the city centre itself coming across, and then we can see the site with the new neighbourhoods here, here and here, all based around the gorge and this huge amount of greenery. I'm actually going to, hopefully this will work now, hopefully that's sharing the my screen with Google Earth. So
it is.
Much of this work was done during lockdown, and what we found is that it was really so hard to understand the 3D that we ended up, half of our meetings was spent zooming around in Google Earth. So I'm actually going to do that now because it's the quickest way to explain a whole lot of things. So this is Sunderland. You can see the whole size of Sunderland here, and you can see that this site, although it's very green, it's actually a city centre site. And this is the city centre, and this is the site here, right here. So it's a city centre site. Very, very important to keep that in mind. But it's a city centre site with a difference. It doesn't feel like the city centre. So, and I would say, out of all of the places I've worked over the last 30 years or so, this is actually the most dramatic and the most interesting place in terms of its topography and its history. No, where's my? Oh dear, where's the? Sorry, I need to find the.
That's okay, Paul. I think it's
So,
lurking
yeah.
in the background again. Yeah, that's all good.
Beg your pardon. Right, got it. So this is all about people and their aspirations. It's not a drawing exercise or interesting geometry exercise. It's about people. Here in Sunderland, it's got to be about history, obviously, but mostly it's about change and about the future, and it's about their relationship with their environment. And the master plan basically sets up relationships between people and the natural world in a way which helps things to flourish. So you've seen the general arrangement here of what's here now. This is the existing site, so we can see Vaux here, the brownfield sites that Michelle mentioned, Farringdon Row, and this huge sheepfarms area with the gorge coming through there. So just very briefly at the history, even by 1926, we can see the industrial revolution was already getting going. We can see here, but this was still a completely green little valley, a green valley coming down to the gorge. But by, this is actually 1940s map, but we can see the whole thing was completely subsumed in the industrialization of Wearside. There's shipbuilding on an astonishing scale, the world, global importance really. But actually, this is all about the collieries, this site, and this is where all the coal drops came through from various tunnels and collieries to drop down onto boats on the way. So completely industrialized. Then by the time we get to all the way through to the 90s, this is a really quick tour. Everything has been there's sort of a reclamation process which greened everything and cleaned everything up. There's lots of great work there, very important first steps, but it wasn't part of a overall vision for joining communities together. So the net result is it still feels very, very, very cut off and remote, and that's how we find it today. So the current plan is to actually make it the centre of a much bigger master plan, and then finally sort of bring it back. Topography is a huge issue. So we have the city up above, there's a big series of plateaus, and then cutting through that, we've got these steep banks. We say banks here, actually they're literally cliffs coming down to the sort of park level in the middle, and then further drop down to the actual River Wear itself. So that gives us this pattern of developable land, sort of flat land, which is close, well connected with the city, and then this whole world of greenery in the River Gorge and around the River Gorge, then connecting up in various ways. And then this shows how that then gives rise to this series of new communities and development land. We thought it was really important to start this by talking about biodiversity, and the heart of the site is already very biodiverse, not least the river itself, the ecology of the river itself. We worked very closely with the ecologists to categorize and quantify all of the existing habitat, and that was a sort of rigorous process which we then took into the proposals, and this is the master plan proposals where we've categorized and quantified all of the proposed landscape. So we're thinking of landscape not as landscaping, we're thinking of it as habitat, and actually what this has given us is a net gain of 11.2% at this level. Obviously that needs to be taken into the detail, but there's a target, there's a target there for everybody to meet within each different development. It does make sense at a big scale and can be carried through to a small scale. We've talked about movement and the fact that this existing movement is essentially very weak and poor quality in terms of what the routes are actually like. the proposed network is much stronger. So it's based on a massive increase in connectors, but crucially it's about hierarchy as well. So we've determined the accessible routes, which are step free and properly lit, and concentrated on those and making all of those work. And then there's a whole finer grain of stepped connectors, which are really important and inevitable and needs to be invested in, but secondary to the sort of well lit, fully connected network. The cycle network is based on is on shared pedestrian shared space. If you imagine that this is a sort of a fine-grained neighbourhood of green spaces and places where people live, where we wouldn't want segregated kind of superhighways. The only main sort of route, really, apart from the main roads around, is the coast to coast. But the theme is about how people behave towards each other rather than creating major routes through. In terms of SUDs, I think like everybody else, we're thinking of this as the sponge city approach. This scheme doesn't have a SUD scheme; it is a SUD scheme. The landscape soaks up water like a sponge and uses it up as much as it attenuates. And through all of this, we're absolutely intent on the landscape being engaging and adaptable. So you can have. We're always thinking about what actually can happen here, and that affects it's not just a landscape design thing. It's about how the circulation works, how the road network works, and how all the buildings work, how how all the ground floor uses work, and all the time, the team's been looking for, where are the schools, where's the community centres, where's the surgeries, and so on, and then all the recreational facilities on top of that. The park really is a destination in itself. It's got a lot of some multifunctional aspects and lots of facilities, and it works not just on a local scale or a city scale, even a regional scale. It's going to be a very important resource. This really runs through everything that we're doing. This is just such a brief summary, but it's integrated through, sustainability is integrated through every aspect of the design. So right from the outset, we're thinking about leave existing landscape where we can, obviously, and that helps balance cut and fill. We're avoiding doing things that we don't have to do. Avoiding overkill, basically keep it simple where we can. Materials are sustainable, local, wherever we can. Nature-based solutions, we've already talked about SUDs, supporting natural resilience, helping what's there, and we've talked about understanding the ecology and the net gain. And microclimate is incredibly important here, and looking at where all the uses and all the activities I've talked about, how is that affected by microclimate. Winds are really important. Obviously, there's the prevailing southwesterlies, which we have all over the UK, but here easterlies are incredibly important. They're not prevailing, but they're very cold when they come. We've talked about community well-being. I talked about travel, and then healthy lifestyles, neighbourhoods, and so on. So it's laced through everything we're doing. The park itself is a design set piece, and our friends at One Environments are starting to design parts of it now, particularly some of the SUDS installations. I think with the park, the key thing is this, what we call the low-level bridge. It's the key factor in the road, the footpath network I talked about. It connects up all of these major routes and pulls the whole thing together down at this park level. There's the higher bridge, the high-level bridge sort of literally overlooks it. It just sails over the top through the sky, really, looking down on all of this. So it's not connected with this network. It's the low-level bridge, which is the real key thing at this neighbourhood level. This gives you an idea of the scale we're talking about here. So this is just this little bit at the top of Galley's Gill as it starts to slope down from the city. You can already see how separate it is from the city as it slopes down. This is really quite near the top. Yes, and here you can see this is the shallowest route down into the area, and that's already kind of nearly 1 in 10 as it slopes down here. So you can see the how it's sort of overlooked by all of these all this new housing up here, which is actually really nice for the housing and really nice for the park, natural surveillance. The entrances to the park are very important. This is the one I've just mentioned from the south. So there's a real sort of civic presence as Galleys Gill comes up to meet the city here. By the Stadium of Light here, we've got a whole new entrance here with a cobbled route coming up. So this needs to have a real civic presence that it doesn't have now. Likewise, there's a metro station here at St. Peter's. So again, this is an entrance not just into the park, but into the whole of Sheepfolds. And then there's another entrance here at Farringdon Row. The moment, one thing that was impressed upon us very much at the beginning is that and it became very obvious quickly, is that the park at the moment is not a place where most people want to go most of the time, and most people would actually never go there. So that's quite a point to start from. And so lighting is incredibly important in making it, it's not just accessible, it's inclusive, so that everyone would want to be there. So we just had to accept that you must light these routes through here, or else people just will not use it much of the time. And that obviously needs to be balanced with the ecology. So really important issues around that, which need to be designed through in the detail. We looked at waterside regeneration, recreation. So we've got facilities here underneath the stadium, but also just how do all these routes go together? So this is actually a 6 metre running route, or even a pushchair route, or a wheelchair route, step-free route, which we've shown weaving around through the whole area, all focused on the park. This was a very interesting discussion, actually. So this is the existing condition. As I sort of keep reiterating, you feel very cut off walking down along the river. You cut off from the park level, and at the park level, most of the time, you feel very cut off from what's going on up in the city. So in order to make strong visual connectivity, we talked about clearing out this middle layer of vegetation in many places, so that there is visual connectivity from the actual river bank itself to the park level, and make the edge of the park occupiable, so that you have visibility through the park, and then between the park and the path around the top of the cliff. And then we've got new uses in the buildings here with visual connectivity even right the way back to the edge of the park. So, but that kind of, in a way, needs to be balanced with the keep it wild approach. So as the park is designed in detail, I'd say that was one of the crucial issues that people need to think about. There's this limestone base, so limestone magnesium grassland is going to be a thing that's going to really help us with this, so we can encourage biodiversity much more than is there now, but also keep it as a sort of an open landscape, so it combines biodiversity with visual openness. With the park and with engaging people, really important to find models which do engage people, so that people are using the park, involved in decisions in the park, and even growing food in the park. And these are I'm going to just talk very briefly about the different neighbourhoods around the park. It's a big plan, but there's a lot in it if we zoom in. So this is the city centre itself around Keele Square, you might be familiar with, and the Keele line coming across the bridge. That connects strongly with Vaux. Really, this is about taking the grid of the city across into the east part of Vaux. And now we can see that this is the east part of Vaux, and it's also about setting up this this really strong cliff edge route as something, a real kind of civic experience that sort of sticks in the mental map of the city. And then Vaux itself, Vaux Housing, which Luke will talk about. This is about creating this route around overlooking the park, which is it's very dramatic, actually. It's really lovely, but then having a sort of fine-grained neighbourhood for people to live. Really, right next to the new town hall, which is right here, which is interesting. And then this is the end of Vaux, where it connects down into the top of Galleys Gill with food growing thing at Kinsley Gardens, suds facilities, water terraces, and so on. And then Farringdon Row is about again, creating these lovely intimate neighbourhoods, but at the same time really encouraging public movement around the edge of the cliff, which there isn't anymore, and then connecting through. So this is a multi-storey car park, and then this is the more kind of civic uses here with the eye hospital, and it's connecting all those things through to the multi-storey car park in the best way. And also about how can we get access. Getting access down into the park, you know, is very challenging. So we need to look at every ways that we can do that. And then Ayres Quay is about this this amazing heavily treed embankment down to the river, this heavily treed gorge looking back across to the stadium, and then connecting with the city with little squares, and then encouraging use, you know, of this linear movement along the river and down to the river. And then Sheepfolds is this very substantial area in the north, which is essentially a flat grid of industrial buildings. But it's kind of reworked. The hierarchy of the streetscape is reworked to make a sort of an accessible to vehicle kind of route, and then all the rest of it, design out traffic all together if we can. So we've got this amazing sort of linear route connecting up from the sort of promontory overlooking the park and the river all the way back up through. So the whole series of green spaces and the community uses, schools, clinics, and so on are sort of clustered along this route. So my colleague Luke now is going to do a catch up on the status of development and talk you through Vaux. So that's okay.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Are you okay stopping and starting sharing between you?
Are you going to share, Luke? Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, could you stop sharing your screen and I'll share mine? Okay, hi everyone. My name's Luke. I'm a senior landscape architect for Camlins, and I was just going to take over from Paul and briefly show you what the current status of development is over the Riverside Sunderland master plan, and also briefly how Vaux housing has actually developed slightly. So hopefully everyone can see this first page, but this is showing how the master plan has actually moved on and where we're at now. So first, what's really great to see that there's actually quite a lot going on, and that the master plan vision is being maintained and progressing. So key, I would say at the moment, is the high level bridge. That's, I believe, out to tender, and this is going into further design developments. That's actually happening here, crossing over. The commercial units that face over the River Wear, they're actually on site right now. So the little image is just a picture showing, you know, some cranes actually up, and actually it started to be built. The City Hall, that was completed at the start of the year. As you move into the heart of the city, there's a new hotel that sits here. Again, I believe that's actually basically completed now. The medical facility, or the eye infirmary, that sits on the south side of Vaux, that is, I believe, in tender also, so it has planning. And as Paul sort of mentioned, there's another landscape architect that we're working quite closely with, who's more local to Sunderland. They're actually developing parts of the SUDS features in the park. So again, they're developing with more detail and more constraints, but it's very close to the master plan, which is great. And they're also looking at the multi-storey car park and the main sort of Vaux cliff edge path that wraps around this blue dotted line and follows around Farringdon Road. And the last bit is actually what we're doing right now at Vaux Housing. So that's what I'll show you next. So what was really great, I think, about the master plan moving forward into more design development is in part due to the team, the consistency that we've had there. So a lot of the design team was carried over from the master plan over to Vaux. So it means that there's a real understanding of the site, the constraints, the community, and the design principles. So there's less trying to interpret the master plan. We all had a really strong understanding of it and where we all wanted it to go. And as the master plan, one of our key considerations really was continuing to push habitat creation and pushing biodiversity net gain. So the actual site at planning, and I believe it would be slightly better now even, is at 11% biodiversity net gain. There was a slight constraint on that, being that the existing Vaux site, when we took it over, had actually been temporarily seeded, temporarily grass, so it made a bit of a constraint in that it already had some value there in terms of biodiversity, but we've managed to make improvements on it by using quite a diverse mix of planting, trying to maximize planting where we can in the small spaces. And the planting palette consists of species rich grassland, and that's really consistent with the species that would typically be found on the site. So particularly Kingsley Gardens is an area of magnesium limestone grassland, which is something that we'd look to try and recreate if we can. But the species rich grassland actually does move into Vaux. And there's also a big spread and a big mix of other planting styles, which again helps with habitat creation, different types of habitat, and improving biodiversity. And that's also underpinned with quite a strong mix of native tree planting that we did work quite closely with the ecologist to set out and put in appropriate places the right tree. And again, keeping that, keeping the ideas from the master plan and then bringing them forward, one of the big things was prioritizing pedestrian movement and pedestrian routes and alternative methods of movement. So what this diagram is showing is basically we've got a very pedestrian friendly space, and most of it is for pedestrians. Generally, cars are kept to the red route, which is a bigger strategic link through Vaux and connects to Vaux East. It's happening over here. And the orange route is really the primary vehicle space through the site, which is just connecting up the small clusters, which really is what this diagram is showing. So when you actually take away all the other colours, you can see how much of it really is pedestrianised, which is great. And just a final piece on Vaux, I just wanted to show you, in the same way that we broke down the master plan, how we could actually break down Vaux, and it has these key areas. And that we've got Gill Square, which sort of sits at the heart of the plan, really. It's sort of the communal hub. It connects to the Gill Bridge, and it's a strategic movement route that leads back into the city centre. And if you remember from the slides Paul was showing, back down to Gill Square. Lamberton View sits right on the edge of Vaux on the northeast. It's very closely related to the new high level bridge and to the beam, which is one of the existing buildings that sits on site. And it's essentially intended to be quite a sociable space, quite relaxed, and a space to take in the views, and it becomes quite playable with this big sort of wiggly planted seat that we designed. The Muse courtyards are sort of residentially focused. It's a strange mix, but one that we like. It's a mix between a private, but it's an open space. The latest developments of this really are actually quite a bit more green than are shown in the diagram here, but essentially it's the same premise. And the communal gardens, these sit in some of the lower blocks on Vaux, but they've always been intended, and they still are now, to be quite green and relaxing spaces for people to meet and come together. And then finally is Kingsley Gardens. So this is developing what's already quite a green space on site, but giving it a community feel. So the intention is for it to be quite biodiverse, and we're using quite a lot of species rich grassland in the surrounding green spaces, but it is fundamentally a community space for the people of Vaux to come together and grow and produce food. And again, one thing that was great about Vaux and what sort of naturally developed out of the design was the ability for us to apply for the Building with Nature accreditation. We had to achieve and meet the standards in these 4 key areas. But like I said, I think that quite naturally evolved out of our general principles for the site. So in creating accessible space, in improving habitats, in maximising green space, and considering alternative methods of movement. and how we're managing water and how we're dealing with that on site. And I'll just pass you over to Michelle for this last piece, which is about the expo.
Oh, hello, sorry, hang on a moment. Yeah, so there we go. Is that my video on? Don't know if you can see, but and quite an exciting aspect of the master plan is that Sunderland City Council will be hosting a housing expo in autumn 2024. So the apologies. The premise of the expo is effectively to show off city living, the home of the future, and also how the master plan has effectively developed. So it will be a free event where people can come and visit. There'll be members of the public who can come and visit, but there'll also be opportunity for exhibitors and partners who have worked with the council and who have also effectively their products and materials have actually been used within the development. And you can see the web link there at the bottom if you wanted to go and find out a bit more about that. But yeah, it's an exciting thing. It would be great for the region, and you know, really showcase and hold the council to account in terms of this is the vision that they had for the master plan, and you know, they're doing it, they're delivering it, and that's really exciting. You know, quite often master plans get developed and they do get watered down, but you know, it's fantastic that, you know, in this case it's not. They really are delivering it, which is really exciting. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Michelle, and Luke and Paul. Thank you. That's great. Would you be able to stop sharing? That's brilliant. Thank you. Amazingly, we don't have any questions. This isn't normal for people. We're quite often inundated, so I'm not sure what's going on today, but I have some, thankfully. So please do add them to the Q&A if anyone has got something burning. But I think, first of all, I kind of was blown away by the complexity of the landscape. And it's almost like an exemplar project to show the scope of what we as landscape architects actually can do if we're given free rein. So, I mean, I wanted to applaud Igloo. It sounds like an amazing working relationship, and you know, even to be delivering what we're seeing in the graphics is unusual in itself quite often these days. But one of the questions I had was about management or maintenance. You know, it's an enormous area, and it's a real bugbear, I think, a lot of the time. You know, it's all these beautiful elements of landscape, but who and how are they going to be maintained? Because it's often just seen as not a positive and a benefit at all, just a drain on costs. So I was really interested in that aspect.
Yeah, so I'll start, but I'll also hand over to Paul after, because we did actually, you know, interrogate this at the master plan stage about the costs of maintenance. But yeah, I mean, the estate management is something that Igloo are working with the city council with. It's not entirely bottomed out yet. Certainly in terms of Vaux and Kingsley Gardens, which we're hoping will be taken on by a community group, and there are several community groups in the area. One I mentioned that we did the sort of blackberry picking and things with, but yeah, it is something that we are all aware of in the council and at Igloo and the architect landscape team, because you know, you can have all of these high aspirations, but you're right, if it's not maintained, then you know, in a couple of years again it won't be used, as is what's happened to the current park. You know, they put it in, but then it hasn't been maintained effectively. And I think actually, Paul, you had a slide on your presentation about how we looked at the different costs for the different types of grassland and that type of thing for maintenance. And I mean, you, Paul, know better, but I think because it is effectively a lot of it will be wild effectively, then it will take quite low maintenance. But Paul, I don't know, Paul, if you have got that slide, or do you want to add in?
Yeah, well, I mean, I could just keep it simple and just sort of talk about it a little bit. So, I mean, everything Michelle says is right there. I think that the city will definitely be involved and are committed to the park. You know, that it's their park, and that's what they will do, and that's what they're thinking about now in the design. I'd say that you know, the neighbourhoods are housing areas. You know, that's different from the park, and then lots of those facilities will be managed by people in the neighbourhoods, and even things, you know, aspects of the park. If once the right organisation is set up, they effectively become kind of self-propelled things. Like say, there's, you know, allotment gardens, community allotment gardens. People will be involved in that, and they'll take it on and be responsible for it. Likewise, if there are things like hub building with commercial aspects to it, with café spill out space, they'll have every interest in making sure they maintain that the way they want it themselves. So that's another aspect. Yeah, and I think that the type of landscape, I mean, things like meadows are actually amazing, because they need much less maintenance than grass, and they offer so much more. So
Yeah.
And as long as the mowing is right and the fertility is low and it's set up right, it can develop over time in a very cost-effective way.
So yeah, all of those considerations. Actually, we have a question, and I think it for me it's almost linked. Kat Pickup is saying, fantastic project. It may have been part of the project management process, but how is the success of the plan monitored as time goes forward? I think that's another really important aspect, well, for any project, but particularly around landscape, and it is intrinsically linked to the management, I think. So
Yeah.
how is that monitoring carried out?
So, I mean, that's probably, if I just share my screen very quickly, because this is part of this. I mean, there's such a big, you know, it's such a big topic. But effectively, the Igloo footprint roadmap is how we assess the project and how we ensure that we're on track. So, for one thing, you know, I mean, we haven't even talked about the housing, but you know, we look to achieve quite a few accreditations. So, home quality mark, so that all the homes are EPC-A. Building for a healthy life, social value portal, so building with nature. We have circular economy plan, whole life carbon costing. So, you know, with those accreditations, you can monitor how the project is going. By, obviously, at the start you target a particular level. So for home quality mark, it's 4 stars, and then obviously as you go through, you ensure through the design process that you're achieving those targets. But in terms of what Igloo do, we at various different stages, and they are often linked to the REBA stages, we will do an assessment on the project. That's fed into something we call our action plan. And then at the completion of the project, 2 years post occupancy, we will do another assessment, and we will look at how the landscape is doing, how the energy efficiency of the properties are doing, you know, everything that is involved in the development of the scheme. And then it is also independently verified. So I mentioned that we have a board, so we report to the board and effectively on how the projects are doing. And again, it's audited by JLL. So, you know, we really try and not, oh, have I lost you?
No, we're
Oh,
still
you're still
here.
there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
So I thought you disappeared. Yeah, so it you know, it's not just something that we set out from the start. You know, we really interrogate how we're going. And yeah, and it, you know, again, it holds designers, it holds us all to account to make sure that, you know, we're not we're keeping the, you know, the brief and the ambition of the projects, you know, at the heart of the decisions that we make.
It's evidence, I guess, as to why, you know, you have the accolade that you do from B Corp. That, you know, that third party verification is so important.
Yeah.
But it's quite a process from that one slide, I would imagine,
Yeah.
to get through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. It's a lot of work, but you know, it stands in good stead because you know, our projects are exemplar, and Vaux in particular is, you know, really fantastic. You know, it's already winning fantastic awards, and that is not why we do it, but it's a nice nod that, you know, that you're doing well. So yeah,
You're on the right track.
yeah, exactly.
I just wondered, Paul, also, we're hearing more and more landscape practices looking at B Corp. And I wondered whether that's something from working with Igloo or elsewhere, whether you were considering it for your own practice for Camlins. Sorry, I put you on the spot. Oh, you're muted.
Probably just as well, yeah, because I don't really
Sorry, I just wondered. It's talked about a lot, but I know it's quite a process again to get through.
Yeah, no, we're kind of, to be honest with you, we've had our noses to the grindstone, and we're sort of just coming up now to start going through all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
you look at a project like that and think you know, you have to have most of the ingredients ready for it. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I know a lot of people want to do it, but it's a lot of time and work, isn't it, to get out of your day job?
Yeah, but it is what we have to do. That, you know, that's the way it's going. And yeah,
you think it will come. Right, I think we're not far off needing to finish. I'd better just move things on a little bit so that we don't run too far over. Sorry, my slides seem to have completely jammed. We're having lots of glitches today. I don't really know why. It's moving on with my notes, but not what you can see on the screen. Finally, sorry, I need to go back to that. Right, I was just going to say that's bringing today's session to a close, and I've just got a couple of minutes to really round up. I hope you'll agree with us that what we've talked about today is obviously very much aligned with the SDGs, and that more responsible development is absolutely possible. You're proving it really well, and in fact vital in today's world. And if some of the subject of the SDGs is now more tangible to you now, thank you, Michelle, for your footprint assessment, because I think that's really helped. Then you can see that we can all contribute to making a difference in our roles. That's really the intent of this whole series of Fikas. And if you'd like to hear more and keep in touch more regularly from us, please do sign up for our newsletter. You can find it on our About Us page on the website. We have a monthly newsletter, which is very well liked, we believe, and we cover all sorts of different aspects of sustainability on there, including anti-hostile design, inclusive public spaces, for example. So do sign up so you don't miss out, and we can then keep in touch with you about upcoming Fikas as well. Obviously, social media and probably particularly Vestra Furniture on Instagram is a good one to follow if that's of interest to you. And then really just to say thank you very much. We really hope you've all enjoyed this session. Thank you for giving up an hour to join us again. It's a very competitive market out there. And we're nearly at the end of the year, so you can see our final Fika in December is coming up. And we're going to be, it was mentioned today by Luke, we're going to be covering biodiversity net gain in action again with a landscape architect and client, Liverpool based, and looking at one of their projects in great detail. It's a fascinating case study, so do join us then. We'll be promoting that shortly. And then the next one will be around March. We've moved to quarterly instead of monthly because it was all just a bit too much for all of us, but you can catch up with past ones here. Don't forget these count towards your CPD, and obviously we also have more formal CPDs if you're interested. Please bear in mind our competition. All of you who joined today are going to be entered into the competition, including our speakers. So thank you, Michelle, Paul, and sorry, I've completely gone blank. And Luke, sorry about that, for the trip to the Plus again next year. We did our first one last month from winners from last year, and it went amazingly well. So you can see how we incorporate the SDGs into what we do in action, and everybody had an amazing time. So keep your fingers crossed. We'll be adding you for the draw in September. So finally, thank you all again for joining us. Really thank you, Michelle, Paul and Luke, for sharing your fascinating insights into this. It really is a remarkable project. And also thanks to Matt in the background, who's trying to keep things on track as ever. So I'll just say happy weekend, or go Helg, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.